because I know to start, I need to not be that huge, big Samoan dude coming down the street at night. I need to be the Rock. And it's going to take me about 100 episodes to get there.
If you are a female Christian entrepreneur or life coach, you need a podcast. And if you have a podcast, you need a podcast coach. Finding a supportive and empowering community is key to podcaster success. Through my holistic approach as a trained life coach and my experience in the podcast industry since 2016, I want to encourage you weekly through answering your podcasting questions. I'm cheering for you, and your voice matters. Welcome to Holistic Podcasting, you guys. I'm Kristin, your podcast coach. I am so glad you are here. We are going to continue talking about podcast monetization. Today, we're going to go through 5 steps to creating your own paid media strategy with my guest, Jay Twining. Jay Twining is a brand strategist with the Brand Builders Group, which is a personal brand strategy firm that I am actually a part of. He is one of those strategists that offers such valuable support to entrepreneurs, service providers, licensed professionals, and you will hear that in our conversation today. So if you have been wondering, how do I create ads? How do I do this in a strategy that actually works? And guys, we talk about math, like hard math. Your brain might hurt the first half of this episode. And then we get into the strategy, and then we talk about maybe some objections that some of you might have. Maybe you are thinking, gosh, I'm not there yet in my podcast, but I encourage you, stay tuned, because at the end, he really encourages us podcasters who may not be seeing those 1,000 downloads per episode quite yet. So don't get discouraged. Listen all the way through, because he's going to give you something to take away with. And I'm so excited for you to listen. So I'm going to stop talking and I'm going to let you go. Here we go. All right, Jay, we are going to talk all about the things, all about podcast monetization and funneling and knowing our numbers and why that's important, and ad spend. And yes, let's just dive right in, because I know this is going to be jam-packed with so much value.
Awesome. So as the marketing specialist for Brand Builders Group, it's a personal branding firm, I've seen so many brand builders, so many folks, either podcasters, people building a coaching business, professional speakers, or authors, pursue this paid media strategy, whether it's to grow their podcast, which is really appropriate for the conversation that we're having today, or simply growing their audience and maybe increasing the values of what they're doing. And what ends up happening is that we always end up in some way, shape, or form doing the right thing, which in this case would be paid media, but in the wrong order. And what that really creates is this crazy world where I've seen people, and you might be surprised, and I know that the holistic podcasters out there might be surprised by this too. I've seen people spend 6 figures, over $100,000 on media buys to sell a $15 product that had some sort of ascension model, meaning higher ticket offers on the back end, to nothing and just flushing it down the toilet. And it's been crazy. And then I've seen people spend $200 and grow their view counts on Instagram by 500. Wow. So the right thing in the right order is really where we want to go. And so to that end, there's a handful of things that I think we should really discuss today. The first being, we really need to understand, number one, what the offer is. And I know as a podcaster, it's really important that there's kind of 2 worlds when we're starting. The first one being, at high level, are we driving to our own offer? The second being, are we pursuing some sort of ad or media buy where we are the platform and somebody is paying us to promote for them on there? So that's the first step. The next one is really, what are these kind of benchmarks that we want to hit to know that we're getting enough views, enough numbers, that our conversion rates are really where we want them to be. So we know that the numbers are representative and accurate. So then at our third step, what we then know is, what's the revenue we're bringing in on the back end, which informs us and tell us what's the revenue that we can spend on the front end, or what's the ad buy that we can make? So I'm ready to go. I love talking about this stuff. It's if you've got an Excel spreadsheet, great, put the numbers in there. We're going to talk about it. If not, a pen and paper will be great. I've got mine and I'm ready to rock and roll. Are you ready?
I'm so ready. I'm ready to nerd out here.
Awesome. So most of the time when we have a podcast, right, there's the growing the platform, which is super awesome. But then on the other side, there's also meeting and getting in front of the people that we want to deeply serve. And that's really, really, I think, very critical, especially for the female entrepreneur listening to the holistic podcaster thing, growing their business, getting after it, doing the jam. Who we're serving is critically important. And so to that end, we have something that we want to put in front of them, our product and service. And so we know that regardless of what it is, it's going to have an investment. It's going to have an amount to get through the door. That can be a $50 lead magnet. That can be a $500 coaching call. Maybe it's a multi-$1,000 membership annually. Who knows? On and on, higher and higher. So what we definitely want to be able to know is in any sort of offer like that, there's the conversation or the traffic. So for our podcasters, this is just having the conversation. There's an ad, right? So this could be as the podcaster promoting this product or service to the audience. There's a sales page, and then there's the actual collecting of the revenue. And the sales page can either be, if it's a lower ticket offer, and by lower ticket, I mean, in general, less than $2,000 as a transaction. That's a lower ticket offer, which can be just a sales call with an order form, and we track a certain kind of number, and we can talk about that in just a second, to the high ticket offer, which typically is a sales call. So our sales page is driving to a sales call. But all in all, what we want is unique viewers divided by click-through rate. And we're going to copy those two numbers across every single step in our funnel. So that's the base of how we calculate our conversion rate. And the conversion rate, what that effectively tells us is for everybody that's visiting the page, how many people are doing the thing that we want them to do on that page, buying or requesting a call. Perfect. So again, that's unique viewers divided by the click or the call to action rate. So typically, let's suppose that you have a sales page, and the way that we want to think about these things is in simple numbers. So 100 people go to the sales page. If 5 people click on and let's say it's a high ticket offer, click on the book a call, that sales page would have a 5% conversion rate. I know it's super simple math. Please forgive me, but I love the simple examples here. So every 100 unique viewers, that's 5% click-through rate. So here's another number and why we need to understand this basic concept. It's the exact same thing for your listenership. You're going to have X number of downloads, and then your ad spot is going to have X number of people that convert on it. So if you're in the middle of your podcast and you're saying, hey, my name is Kristin and I help podcasters get after it. I work for female entrepreneurs in this space and we have blah, 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 and we're doing all this stuff and I can help you accomplish this thing. All you have to do is go to www.whatevermyurlis.com to book a free call with me. So what you would then do is you would say, all right, what's my monthly download rate for my podcast as unique visitors or unique listens? That's how I would do it. But I think in general, the podcast platforms are going to give you downloads or views, some sort of number like that. So you're not getting that unique number. So it's a little bit imperfect, not meaningful. What matters is that you have a top end number. Mm-hmm. And then you say, okay, how many unique viewers that I then see on that landing page or sales page? So they're going to whatever the URL is.com. That's your unique views. That's that number of unique views for the first calculation of the efficiency of the ad becomes the click-through rate. So we have monthly downloads divided by unique visitors to that sales page. That gives us a conversion rate on the ad. So that's the first number that we have. So it's the conversion rate on the ad. Then we do the second number, which is the unique visitors divided by the people that have accepted the call to action, buying the thing or requesting the call. That's the second percentage number. Why is this significant? Because what it's telling us is that in the funnel of the podcast, to generate more revenue, to deeply serve our audience, get in front of them, change your life, have maximum impact, we know that for every X number of listeners, downloads, or views on the podcast, we're going to get Y number of people that are accepting the call to action. And let's just suppose that it's a free call. So you have downloads. The second number is unique visitors. The next number is taking the free call. So the call to action. Okay. Then if we really want to get very intricate, and this is the next stage, because that's marketing, then we get into sales, which is for every sales call that you have, how many people did you convert? What were the people that accepted you on your offer? Typically for the founder, the main personality, you should be roughly between 30% and about 60%. You're the main personality. You're the podcaster. You have the deep relationship with your audience. They should love, number one, you know that you've hit it correctly when they're specifically asking for you to help them, and you've put the product and service in front of them that is the most meaningful. Okay. So how's that? I know it's a lot of numbers. I want to allow catch up here. How are we doing?
That's good. And it totally makes sense. And I can see this playing out in MailChimp. Well, I use MailChimp, and the conversion rate, the 100 to 5% to that last number. It makes sense in my brain. And I think for people that are listening, I'm thinking of my women podcasters that are hovering around that 1,000 downloads and slowly growing, that this will make sense. It's very clear on, okay, if you put an ad in there for your upcoming course, knowing how to calculate this well and what your expectation is going to be, this is golden. Because I think what this does is when we set ourselves up for expectation, like if we're seeing this 5% conversion rate, if we fall well below that, it's time to learn or see where in the lineup we are maybe not delivering a message clearly or something. It's just an opportunity to take a peek at, okay, something's off here, because the math is math. It's going to make sense. So, right. Yeah.
And one of the favorite things I like to say to all of my marketing clients that are in this marketing phase of their journey is that a lot of people think marketing is the creative. A lot of people think it's picking your fonts and your colors. Maybe it has to do with your imagery and stuff like that. Marketing is math. It really is. It's all about the arithmetic and all those different elements that I mentioned, the visuals, the style guide, the photography, which is critical to success as you're growing and scaling. It's all in service to helping increase your conversion numbers, which is math. Mm-hmm. And so understanding the basics of this, it really sets you up for great success, not only in measuring the efficiency. Number one is the product or service. Another way to say that is the way that I'm choosing to serve my audience, to serve my avatar. Does it match their expectations and needs? So if you're at the point where you've got 1,000 downloads and say you've had 25 sales calls and you've had 0 conversions, that might be saying that, hey, the content that you're putting out, maybe that doesn't match specifically what the needs of that audience. And so it opens up questions. And I love using these numbers to really ask myself questions about what's happening in the status of the business, what's going on between what the expectations are and what I'm talking about versus, what my client or my avatar really wants. And so that's kind of the first level. That's kind of the litmus test of as things are going. But this is what I also know as well. My hope is that anybody that has 12 or 20 sales calls, right, that they're able to convert some and start their business. So on that side, I think it's really, really great. So we've been using sales calls, but I really want to preface as well, the math is the same, whether it's a hard sale or a hard sales page, which means, they're going and they're putting in their credit card right on that sales page, no interaction, and they're buying the course. Because I think you mentioned the course earlier on. It's the same math.
Yeah.
It's the same math. Okay. So I really love the fact that we hit this 1,000 downloads. So 1,000 is a significant number because when we're expanding our opportunity into a paid media buy scenario, everything is calculated in impressions, which is per M, using the Latin word per, what is it, mille, I think it is. Mille, I speak French, so it's per mille. So per thousand, right? So it's per thousand. So typically everything is calculated per thousand impressions. So that's an impression. So an impression effectively means at this point, who has seen the ad. So if we're going, let's take a step back and reinforce the example. Every person that has listened to the podcast counts as an impression because they've heard the ad, right? So then we apply that to a paid media scenario where that means, I don't want to list off the specific providers because in 20 years it might be a different set, and because your podcast is going to be around there as well. I wish you the maximum amount of success possible. So if you're in the paid media area, the number of people that are seeing the ad is going to be a fraction of the people that click through it. It's a minor fraction. When we're talking at the paid media area per thousand, we're usually talking at 0.25% through to about 3%. And 3%, that's like top, best in class, everything's dialed in, absolutely amazing on click-through rates. Now, I think in that world, I'm thinking more, and now, darn it, I have to break my rule. Now we're talking about the Facebook, Instagram kind of world where it's sort of an engagement or an attention economy, because it's a whole nother series. And I don't want to overload people too much, but there's a couple different kinds of ads you can do. But we're just kind of talking about right now a conversion rate one for this case. So 1,000 is significant. You get to your 1,000 downloads. You know what your offer is. You have your ad. You've calculated your conversion rates before. When you move into when you have those numbers, what that kind of also allows you to calculate is the cost per the step, or the cost per the click, or the cost per the email. The technical term is the cost to acquire the customer. And so what that means is, let's take the sales call example. Let's suppose you had 10 sales calls and you had 3 people that took you up on your offer. So you have a 30% conversion rate. Let's suppose, simple math again, it's $1,000 for that offer. So you've had 10 people, right? And you've had 3 conversions, 3 new clients or customers. So it's $3,000 total dollars. So what you end up doing is you divide the total revenue by the number at this step that requested the call. So the average value of a sales call in this scenario is $300, right?
Yep.
Because it's $3,000 total revenue for the client, 10 total calls. That gives you the average value of a sales call. Now you can extend that math through the rest of your funnel. What that allows you to do as you extend that is that you know how much you can pay for a listener, how much you can pay for a listen, how much you can pay for somebody to land on the sales page, how much you can pay for the sales call. Why is that significant? Because when you're creating your media creative, you're going to want to make sure that it's working at each step. And you kind of optimize an ad, and your listeners can't really see me pantomiming, but if you think of downloads on the left and then clients on the right, you kind of want to optimize from the left to the right along those, and we call them ratios. So for instance, let's suppose that you're in a media buy strategy, and right now in our scenario that it's $300 for the sales call. Well, in your media scenario, what happens if it costed you $400 to get that sales call?
Then you would be losing money, right?
You'd be losing money. So you can't put more money into that ad buy. However, what if you're paying $200 for the sales call?
Definitely worth it.
Exactly. You can keep going. Mm-hmm. So this is that example of when we're thinking about our media buy, what we want to know is, if I put $1 into the machine, what am I getting back? Mm-hmm. And that's all this is. So in our scenario, am I getting at least $300 back on the investment? That's why those numbers are so critical. And that's why that final piece of figuring out your revenue, figuring out how much you can pay for that new client allows you to dial that in. Now, here's the secret, because we're talking about podcasting, we're talking about personal brands, we're talking about it. Number one, all the big players, they have a media strategy. They have a media buy strategy. Everybody does. Everybody does it. Anybody that hits a certain tier, it just becomes a matter of you want to reinvest into the business to grow the back end. This is why it's so critical when you hear in marketing, not that you should start with this, but you definitely want to have a sophisticated back end of progressively more investments so that you're always profitable.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So you got your revenue, you know how much you're doing. So now we're like, all right, well, Jay, you told us this crazy story about somebody that spent 6 figures on their media strategy. They didn't make any money on it. What gives? Most people, when they're starting without any sort of education or plan, they're going right for an ad strategy that is a direct conversion. So what they're going for is, I want to take what we call a cold audience that's never heard of me, that I have no relationship with, where there's no trust, and I want to put any amount of money in front of them and have them just invest. Now, what that is basically doing is you're testing your ability to write copy against their ability to discern whether or not the value of that investment, it could be as low as $1, is actually worth paying you $1. And so this is why it's so critical that we build that trust. Here's an example. I love this example. So let's suppose this super big Samoan, right? You're walking home at night. You just had a great evening at the restaurant. You're with your SO, your significant other. Everything's going great. And then this super big Samoan comes by, right? He's a little bit of a mean mug. You know anything about the culture? They're kind of deadpan, a little bit stoic. Maybe they're 6'8", all sorts of tattooed. Maybe they're twice as wide as you. You're kind of looking and feeling like a twig. You're going to feel kind of intimidated, right? Probably not going to feel very great or very safe. It can be like, oh my goodness, it's dark, it's night. This huge dude came out of nowhere. It's crazy, right? We don't like that scenario. It's not very fun. We don't know, like, or trust this person. What if The Rock rounded the corner, right? Being The Rock, you know who he is, Dwayne Johnson, right? You probably trust him. You've seen him in the movies. You know who he is. He's the same guy, big Samoan, probably a little bit stoic of the face, plenty of tattoos, about 6'8", really wide. You're going to have a completely different relationship with that encounter. Would you agree?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Perfect. So what we've outlined is this core concept of know, liking, and trusting.
Yeah.
So when we're thinking about our media buy, the first step is we want to establish that familiarity. And so the most amount of our ad spend, if we're thinking about breaking things up, it's something called the courting phase. And in this world, we're spending the biggest percent on just views. We just want people to see us. We just want them to listen to the podcast. We just want to put a well-performing post in front of them. All we want them to do is see us. We're not asking for a conversion. We're not asking for an engagement. We're not asking for anything. We're just saying, hey, media thing. Hey, YouTube ad spot. Hey, Facebook. Hey, whatever. Just put this in front of somebody. All I want you to do is put this in front of the person that I think that my avatar is. That's going to be the first step, because we're trying to get to that know, like, and trust. We're trying to get to walking down the street and meeting The Rock, right? Where you're The Rock. So that's the first step. After that, what we then do, this is going to be a little bit advanced, but then what you then do is you say, okay, media thing. Of all the people that saw that ad that was only views, of the people that looked or watched through to the end, or they watched the video to a certain percent, or they clicked on the thing, or they engaged with the post, take all those people that did those behaviors and serve them a second ad. This is our second highest ad spend by percentage. And on this one, what we're asking them for is actually an engagement. We're saying, hey, if you like Samoans, you might like shaking the hands of big Samoans. So we're kind of increasing that know, like, and trust. So we're creating what we're calling a fan, somebody that's engaging. And what we're doing is we're telling the algorithms, and this is kind of how we're hacking this. We're telling the algorithms who is it that's a good fit for what we're doing.
Mm.
So then the next stage of our ad spend, if we're in this world, is now we're actually asking for them, or we're asking them for something. Why? Because at this stage, because we've been kind of, I'm going to say recursively building it, but I need to figure out a way to express that, not using the word recursive, right? We had the views, so they've seen us. We've had them engage on something. So they've kind of opted into an engagement. They said, I like this person enough. I'm familiar enough with this person to spend a little bit of my time engaging or commenting or sharing the post. Now we're saying, hey, you trust me a little bit. Would you like to register for a free thing? Maybe it's a free training. Maybe it's a lead magnet, some sort of interaction where what we're doing again is we're moving from that right side to the left side. We're moving closer to that trust. And so in this world, and maybe your audience knows this or not, but the single best conversions, the single best high quality lead magnets are free trainings and webinars. So no matter what it is that you're doing, even if it's a $15 product, even if it's a $5 product, you should probably have a little webinar in front of it.
Hmm.
So that's the registration stage. So now we're at the third stage. And at this stage, this is the first time where we're giving them some value. And probably in that webinar, you're probably asking them for that sales call.
Yeah.
Right. So you're probably asking them for that sales call that we know that we can generate $300 from in our example. Okay. So then what ends up happening is that we spend the last little bit, the lowest percentage of, okay, everybody that viewed the ad, everybody that engaged with the ad, everybody that signed up for the webinar, and everybody that went to a certain point in that webinar, let's surface one last shot at this person to say, hey, you know what I'm about. You know, I want to coach you. You know, I can add value and I can help grow your podcasting world. You know, Holistic Podcasters is the place to be. Come on and join. Here's the last little thing. I'll give you a limiter or a bonus. What we've done is we've done now with the media buy, instead of going 0 to 100 to a cold person that is that dark Samoan with tattoos that's twice as big as us, that's super wide and super tall and really crazy and intimidating. And we've said, oh, I'm The Rock. I'm this happy-go-lucky guy that sells tequila, and I entertain you on the screen. And so that's sort of the best way we've found. And by we, I mean at Brown Brothers Group. I'm a strategist. I'm the marketing specialist at Brown Brothers Group, that we have found to really do your media buys. And so what that does is that it creates that deeper relationship, gives people a chance to opt in and opt out. We can now measure the efficiency of those ads. And here's the great thing about this story is that same person that spent about $100,000 on a high ticket offer was able to generate some sales calls, not a lot of success. When we implemented this version of it, 20,000, 30,000, 20,000, 30,000. It completely changed because we were able to slowly over time build that relationship with that avatar that wants to leave that restaurant, that really wants to meet The Rock, that really wants to shake his hand and have a really good time, that really wants that relationship, lets them know who we are in a world where there's a whole ton of snake oil salesmen and saleswomen just trying to make a buck.
Yes.
And creating that relationship and creating the space for that and saying, hey, I'm trustworthy. I've got your back. I know who you are. I have a product and service that can help you solve your problems. That's what this is all about.
Yeah. Oh, man, that was like the most helpful process for me to hear. I mean, I feel like I've been in this world for so long, and this feels so manageable and doable of, again, like taking that math and then creating this step by step by step process of know, like, and trust is genius. And no wonder you saw such a flip in that one client who unfortunately lost a lot of money, but then through this process is definitely gaining that back. I will say, so I have a inkling that some of my podcasters will be like, yeah, that's great. 1,000 downloads. I'm nowhere near there. So, what would you say to somebody who is not quite there yet? And I know we talked about it a little bit with our math at the beginning, but what would be your advice as a brand builder's strategist to somebody who's not quite at 1,000 downloads? Where would you guide them?
That's a great question. And so the first step and the first piece of advice is just simply keep going.
Hmm.
You just got to keep going. I've learned this. I love the podcasting space. I learned this at Podcast Movement. I've been learning this from, there's a handful of other producers, and one of the bigger podcast companies, production companies in the space said, by and large, most of the time, a lot of podcasts don't even hit their stride until they hit episode 100.
Yep.
So if you're not quite at 1,000 downloads, you probably haven't quite hit 100 episodes. And so
Yeah.
there's two core ways that you can really, I think, fix that. And right now we're specifically only talking about the podcast because there's tons of extra advice here. And I'd like to go into that after this. So the first being is that you can increase the frequency of the podcasts that you release on a weekly cadence. So typically, I'm a really big fan of an interview format where you are the host, you have a bunch of guests, and you have a conversation. This is what I do on my podcast, which is Feel Good Fatherhood. It's on YouTube and YouTube Music. I'm a video first podcast. And so in that world, I love meeting other fathers. And in fact, I love meeting people that are serving fathers as well and having them come in and share their expertise.
Hmm.
And by having that niching super down and knowing specifically who I serve, right? So, because my core belief is this, is that if you're not seeing the results that you want in your life and it's inconsistent everywhere, it simply means there's probably a hard skill and a soft skill that you need to learn. So the soft skill in this scenario is discipline and perseverance. You just need to believe enough in your avatar, believe enough in your message and what you're doing, and get really freaking clear on that.
Yeah.
Super clear. Who are they? How am I helping them? What do they want most in the world? And why is it that I am the best person to help them with that? And if you have that specifically in your brain and in your heart and in your soul, and you approach every single day with that, you can't help but succeed. It is a matter of time.
Mm.
That's the soft skill. The hard skill, it might be audio quality. It could be video quality. Maybe you need to make some investments. Feel Good Fatherhood for me right now is a multi-$1,000 a year hobby.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I'm having a conversation and building an audience, and I'm not making any money from it. And I'm not trying to make any money from it because I know to start, I need to not be that huge, big Samoan dude coming down the street at night. I need to be The Rock. And it's going to take me about 100 episodes to get there. And even then, I don't know. Like, who knows? Pardon me. I'm having so much fun doing it and I'm learning so much. It could just simply be this hobby for me for a while because it's about those hard and soft skills. And in that format, there's two things that are happening for me. Number one, I'm meeting prospective brand builders and community builders for my primary way of making money, right? Which is my role as a resident strategist at Brand Builders Group. So that's really fun. And I'm learning tons of these hard and soft skills across the board, which is absolutely amazing. But then number two, it's increasing my Rolodex, it's increasing my impact, it's getting me in front of more people, which is at the very, very beginning. That's why we're doing this.
Yeah.
We're doing this because we want to have that impact.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the first thing specifically on the podcast. It really is just keep going and then maybe take a look at the quality. There could be some quality things, especially when we get into video and audio. There's SEO consideration, titles, descriptions, thumbnails. I'm on YouTube. It's an entire game. Thumbnails and titles. That's all YouTube is. And then fulfilling on it and the quality of the entertainment on the back end. But on the branding world, right? What we're talking about is that all personal brands go through a certain phase. We talked about the right thing in the wrong order. The whole purpose of the strategy is knowing that you're doing the right thing in the right order, right? And that effectively starts at branding, right? You got to know who you are. You got to know who you serve. You got to know a little bit about how you serve them. You got to have marketing, which is what's this back end system of getting your message out there to attract these people in a digital ecosystem, basically what marketing is. You got to learn how to sell. And sales, you got to get yourself in front of people. You got to close these coaching calls that you're driving to get that $300 a coaching call. And then eventually, if we're lucky enough and we put the time in, luck wasn't the right word. If we persevere enough, we have the discipline and we develop these skills enough, then we scale and we grow the business and we add on more people. If it's a podcast, you bring on a producer, maybe bring on an assistant, maybe bring on salespeople, et cetera, et cetera. There's all these other different kinds of considerations of how we go there. But ultimately, it really starts with who are we serving? And that's really where the heart is. If you really want to know how to have that impact, how to move forward, and, when you're at that 1,000, you're trying to hit that 1,000 downloads, really, it's just about, do you give an F? Do you care? Is the calling on your heart correct for this person? Because I promise you, if the calling of your heart is there and it's answering the call of somebody that desperately needs what you have, they're going to find you.
Yeah.
And you'll have your success.
That is mic drop. All of that. Yes, that was so helpful, Jay. And I personally am taking a lot from this conversation. And I know a lot of my podcasters who have been clients and boot campers who've launched podcasts and are, in that 40 to 50 episodes right now, they're feeling that struggle bus, which is so common. I think it's just so helpful to hear the episode 100, just keep going and learning those hard and soft skills. That's so important in this journey as a podcaster. Wow. I thank you so much for everything today. This was so valuable. I appreciate it.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you very much for having me. And Holistic Podcasters, you can do it. I believe in you. Keep going. Success is right around the corner.
Yes. Thanks for listening to Holistic Podcasting. Hey, if you enjoyed the show, leave a review and tell me why you loved this particular episode. I would love to hear from you, friend. And as always, happy podcasting.